Alright, so now that in the last tutorial we kind of defined our game by creating these elements, what we want to do now is actually uh, take this and begin to create some of the logic behind the game. And I want to note that we're going to do this actually before we even work with anything in the scene. Whether you want to work this way is up to you. I prefer to because it really helps me kind of drive out uh, the elements and the logic behind it before I focus too much on getting things in the scene. But that's just me as a developer. You can totally go in and start creating views and all of that other stuff, which we'll talk about in another tutorial. You can totally go in and do all that first if you want, but I prefer to, especially for this tutorial, go in and actually work with the logic on making all this work. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So with our diagram, what we want to do is hit save so that it generates all of the code. And so now we've got an entire complete code base for everything we've already just defined here using the MVC VM model. Now, if you're not a developer, you might not find this part of the tutorial very useful, but if you're a developer, I really think you're gonna love it. So I want to go into and look at the controllers. And what the controllers are for is to actually define the logic of each element. So, for instance, a player, whenever he picks up a pill, it's going to increase the number of red pills and number of blue pills. Also, apply the health modifier to his health, and then when his health changes, it might move his current state to full health, running low, or an emergency. And this makes me think of one little thing I can also add to this emergency game. What is a game without a score? So let's just go ahead and add a score in here. So score, and do int. So as this happens, maybe depending on the number of red pills and blue pills they pick it up and how many times they run into one of these states, it might increase their score. And wow, one more thing. Considering that these pills, since I defined earlier, I completely forgot this, but the pill it's not only has a health modifier, but the pill might have a speed modifier too. So if they pick up the red pill, they speed up, and the blue pill will actually increase their health. Now I could actually go in and forget the type and health modifier, create a pill, do new element, and be very definitive and do a blue pill and another element and do a red pill and say that both of these get I just clicked on something weird, and both of these are considered of type pill. This is what we call inheritance, where you're defining something in a generic level, and then defining things in a more specific way. But a blue pill and a red pill is both a pill. So I can define some logic for a pill that will be defined for both the blue pill and red pill. This is great because I don't have to recreate things for red pills and blue pills. I can simply just work with it in here, and both of these will get its properties, collections, and commands of the pill. But for this demonstration, I'm not going to keep these. I'm going to remove these. And I'm just going to add another property here called, let's see here, the speed modifier. And we'll make that a integer as well, or a number. And on the player, I need a max speed, not a max speed, a speed. Or let's do running speed. And actually, you know what? We'll just keep it an int. Again, I might have to change it. Okay, I think we're good here. So let's hit save again. Let it compile. Alright, so back to the controllers and how they define the logic. I'm going to show you kind of what's already done for you. So now that I hit save, I'm just going to go to Unity VS and generate the project files. This will just reconnect all my files to the Visual Studio files. So if you have Unity VS or Mono Develop will happen automatically. Sometimes Unity VS doesn't register, so I always do it just by default to generate the new project files whenever I save. Okay, so now we can easily access the controller code for this by just right-clicking and going to Open Controller File. It's going to want me to reload it, and here we go. So now my player controller, I want you to take note of this. Now, granted, this is all, under the hood stuff that you don't have to worry about, but I'm going to show you just anyway kind of what it does. It automatically adds properties to where you can access other controllers, and these are built based off of your associations. So considering the emergency game has a collection of pills, or actually we're looking at the player, sorry. So since the game has a player associated with it, it knows that the player might need to talk to the emergency game. So it takes the liberty of going ahead and including that with it. It does the same thing with the pill controller, where the actual pill is associated with it, or the pill, the pill controller, because our command pickup pill uses a parameter of type pill. So our player already has these to work with it. You don't have to use them, but they're there. And since this is a, or since the player is a single instance controller, it will automatically give you an instance to a player. And this is kind of what the scene managers do. They go ahead and set all this up for you automatically. It knows all the single instances and goes ahead and creates it for you. So it's already there and ready to use, as well as your controllers, hence the inject attribute. All this will already be wired up. I don't even have to think about how it gets there or anything. I just work with it. One last thing to note is that it automatically takes care of wiring up your commands. So on a single instance controller, we don't need a reference to the instance because we already have that done for us. So in any command for the player, all we're going to need is that pill. So it goes ahead and does the whole uFrame, MV, CVM fun stuff and connects the command to a virtual method which I can easily just override. Now this is all generated. You don't want to edit anything in here. It's just following the model and setting things up for you for easy access and to eliminate a lot of just redundant doing things over and over again for each thing. It's just already there. So now let's go back to our actual code in our player controller, and what we want to do here is do override, and then we'll do pick up pill. So this is already generated for us, and it already includes the pill for us. We don't need to focus on how all this stuff is getting there at this point. We'll go into that later on. But right now we can focus that this is something that is going to happen. And since I'm doing this and just showing you, I actually realized that there's a little bit better way I can do this. Instead of having a player have the pickup pill, what I want to do is I'm going to remove that and add a pickup command. Because by rule of thumb, and this is a very light rule, but if you can find a way to use a command without any parameters in a way that I can't fully describe, I feel like it follows the model a little bit better, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong not to, because there's definitely cases where you need it, but I try to create things in a way where commands really are just, a very literal, I call it and it's done. I don't have to worry about, passing any parameters to it or anything. So let's resave that. Go back to our open controller file. So now we have an error here. And if I had saved this before, I would get this error here, which I feel like this is a helpful error because it's letting me know that, okay, this pickup pill method no longer exists. So I can just double click on it and then go make the change. So I'm going to remove this. Remove and hit save. Alright. Alright, so now when the pill is picked up, I'm going to actually show you let's go to the controller file. So now in the pill controller, now I'm going to override the pickup method. And remember when I was talking about the multi-instance elements, which this pill is a multi-instance, hence the star? It generates the controllers in a slightly different way. On my pill controller, I've got access to the controllers just like my others, but it doesn't give me a property to a single instance of a view model. So each method then requires me to know which pill is actually, or which instance is actually executing this pickup command. So uFrame wires all this up for you automatically. So when we go to the pill controller, each parameter for any multi-instance controller, or each command, will pass a reference to the instance of that view model with it. So whenever we pick up this pill, the pill can't really do anything with it. It doesn't have anything to show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually hand this off to the game controller to do this for us. So I'm going to do emergency game controller, which is automatically set up for me. And then I'm going to maybe create a method where pill picked up, and then I'm going to pass the pill along with it. Now I don't actually have this method. I'm going to have it actually create it for me. Alright, so it created that method. So now, again, when the pill command is executed, it's going to say, hey game controller, hey, a pill was picked up. So now my game controller can kind of control what happens when a pill picked up. And this is really good because if I wanted to make another subtype of this game, like say for instance I wanted to change some of the logic behind what happens when a pill's picked up, I can do that simply by just overriding the emergency game controller. I can add a new class on top of this and just make this method a virtual method, override it, and change the way it functions. I'll keep that virtual just for the heck of it. So now that the pill is picked up, I'm going to make things fairly easy. And I'm actually going to just go ahead and delegate this to the player controller. I could just perform the logic here for what happens to the player data, but just for the case of, I can kind of show you how easy it is to work with different controllers in different ways. I'm going to just hand it off to the player controller. And again, because the emergency game has the player property, it knows that, hey, you're probably going to need that player controller. So it goes ahead and wires that up. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to do it here. I think this will be easier. I'm going to store a variable to it. Because the player controller has an instance or it's a single instance, I can also access that property from here. So now, let's say player dot number of blue pills. Wait, let's do pill dot pill type. There we go. If pill dot type is equal to blue, we're going to increment the number of blue pills. And else, otherwise, in this case, we only have two types, so I'm just going to put an else. But if we had more, I would do an else if, of course. Red pills plus plus. All right. That looks pretty good so far. So also, I'm going to do player dot health plus equals pill dot health modifier. So whatever we set that health modifier to, it will actually modify their health. And we'll do player dot running speed plus equals. What did I name that? I gotta put pill first. Pill dot speed modifier. Alright, I think we're pretty good here. I think we've got some of the basic logic here. We might actually want to add a constraint here like math.max or min, where I want it to do so it doesn't go over 100. And also do a max so it doesn't go below 0. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so this will ensure that the value doesn't go below 0 or 100, which we'll be monitoring the values anyways, but just to make sure. Alright, we could do the same thing with the running speed. Actually, I did this wrong. I need to... we need to store it as a variable. Health equals... Let's copy this. And just say plus. Player dot pill dot health modifier. Then we'll do health equals change this to health. Oops. Player health. Alright, there we go. Now it's successfully clamped. I'm running a little slow right now, so if you're screaming at your screen, I'm sorry. Alright. So I think this pretty much sums up the when things happen as far as the game controller is concerned. But now I want to move to the player controller. So let's go right click on the player and just do open And one thing I want to make note of is that this Initialize Player is set up so that whenever the player view model is created, I have a place where I can do additional things with this view model. I could do some additional setup if I would like. So what I'm going to do is actually do this dot subscribe to property. And what this is going to do is actually I want to know when the player's health is changed. So I'm going to say player and then player health property, because I'm subscribing to the health property, not just health. It needs to be the actual property field. And then I'm going to have an action that's going to be called whenever the player's health changes. So I'm just going to call this health changed. And another great thing about Visual Studio is you have really cool methods, helpers to help you do things like this. And I can't remember if Visual Studio has it by default, but ReSharper's a great plugin for these types of things. So I'm just going to go create method health changed. And I'll make my arguments make something or mean something. And then health. Alright. So now we're set up to know when the health has changed. Alright, so now what I want to do is say if the health is less than, let's say 60, and I could add another property to this so I could define it in a different place as far as this 60, but just keeping things simple and very definitive, I'm just going to hard code the 60 value there. So my health, if it's below 60, I'm going to set the player state. So in this case, I've got access to it here just for ease, but I could also use the actual property, but I'll use the parameter it passes in. So player dot state is equals running low. And we'll put another condition here, and the health is greater than 30. Else if health is less than 30, player dot current state equals player state dot emergency. So we've got an emergency state. Otherwise, we'll say the player's dot current state equals full health. Alright. Also on this initialize, just to further set it up. Well, we don't have to do that here. Okay. Actually, we need a if health is less than 0. We can call so emergency game controller, or not less than 0, I'm sorry, is greater than 0. Then everything's fine, else. So if their health has reached 0, we want to actually end the game. So what we're going to do here is do FPS game controller. Oops. Game emergency game controller dot game over. So we can call this method directly. We don't have to do anything from the actual view side. We know that this happened, so we can just call it directly. Alright. So I think this basically sets up the basics of the logic behind our game. We might come back to more and revisit as we build it out a little bit more, but I think you get the general idea of where to go from here as far as adding logic to the game and kind of what controllers are used for. So thanks for watching, and we'll continue on in the next tutorial.